Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me begin by thanking both of you and the members of your commission for the work and the service to our country that this provides. Most recently, when Director Haynes and General Cruz were before this committee, I think it was in May, they confirmed that the initiation of hostilities between the United States and either Russia or China would increase the likelihood that hostilities would be initiated by the other against the U.S. as well. It would appear, based on the conversation so far, that your commission would agree with that assessment. Is the department planning for this reality in which conflict with either Russia or China likely means a conflict with both today? Ambassador Edelman?
Well, the department's plans basically, as embodied in the NDS of 2022, like its predecessor in 2018, essentially is geared towards defeating one adversary while holding the others, harmless essentially by nuclear deterrence. What I don't think the department is actually begun to wrap its arms around is precisely the scenario you outline, where, to give an example, if we got into some kind of conflict in the Indo-Pacific, whether it be over Taiwan or the South China Sea or East China Sea, what might Russia do? One thing that comes to mind is take advantage of the separatist movement in Moldova to move on Moldova, a country that's trying to move closer to the European Union and to the West, which would then precipitate, additional conflict in Europe, or take advantage of the ethnic Russian-speaking minorities in the Baltic states, say Latvia, to initiate a conflict there. How would we manage that? When you raise that question with department leaders, they basically say, well, that, to go back to the chairman's point earlier, well, that would be sort of like World War II, or, would require national mobilization. And that's correct, but we haven't really taken the next steps to really focus on what that and what a protracted conflict would actually look like. We're optimized to fight very short wars.
Representative Harman, I appreciated your comments at the very beginning of this discussion, in which you shared that yesterday your family was challenged and that your daughter was going through some very serious surgery, and this is something that every family can identify with. You also talked about the technologies involved in your decision-making was that you would stay there if anything serious was still in the air, and I appreciated that, and believe me, this entire committee would have supported you in that decision. You also indicated the need or what this country represented with regard to the technologies that we have and that we sometimes don't take advantage of. We have that opportunity with this report to talk about those technologies today. There are 5 different domains in which our country will be attacked in the future. Air, land, and sea, most people would understand. But space and cyberspace are the new domains which will precede any attack on the first 3. With regard to cyber, today in the United States, we just recently came through a time period in which an accident occurring by one company literally crippled a significant part of our airline industry. Is it fair to say that both Russia and China have capabilities to do more than simply cripple airline capabilities? And what exactly would that look like for the American people should we have a contest with either one of those two adversaries?
Well, thank you, Senator Rounds, for your personal comments. I really appreciate that, and I hope everyone on the committee is as fortunate as I was with the news that I got late last night, which enabled me to get on the 6 a.m. plane. On cyber, it's a huge threat, and I don't think we minimize it in any way. One of the things we might anticipate, for example, is if China decides to annex Taiwan, or whatever euphemism they might use, they might engage in a major cyber attack here first, for which we are underprepared. Cyber attack of our infrastructure. When I was in Congress, I represented the Port of Los Angeles, which with the Port of Long Beach is the largest container port complex in the country. 50% of our container traffic enters and exits through those ports. There are cranes on the port, surprise, to move the cargo, and those cranes have Chinese technology. So guess what?
All of which are subject to the possibilities of cyber attack.
Absolutely. We should anticipate that our ports could go down.
Throughout our entire society, we find that to be the case, don't we?
I'm agreeing with you. And this is devastating. Does the American public understand this? No. This is our point about public awareness. This is something that's happening right now. If anyone's watching this important hearing, they're learning things that they might not know otherwise. It's an opportunity for leadership to try to educate the public, and thanks to your committee for doing it, about the grave threats we face. So cyber is a huge threat. You also mentioned space. Again, something I know something about, since I used to call my district the aerospace center of the universe, where most of our intelligence satellites were made. We are more dependent on space as a country and more vulnerable in space because of that dependency than any other country. And shoring up space, which is one of the threats we address, is absolutely crucial. And it's not just military space, but commercial space. A lot of how you talked about communication, a lot of how we communicate is through commercial space. And think how inconvenienced the public would be if all of a sudden their little devices, which we're all dependent on, didn't work.
Thank you. I'm out of time and overtime. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.